If you Google what feminism is, you'll be told that it's about equality. Simple, harmless equality. Quite simply, feminism is about all genders having equal rights and opportunities. Feminism is the belief in full social, economic, and political equality for women. Feminism at its core is about equality of men and women. Well, I think Google is lying. Feminism is about hating men. It's a toxic, hateful ideology that blames men for all of society's problems and places female life as more valuable than male life. But if you hear that definition of feminism, it's obviously clear that it's disgusting. It's sexist, it's bigoted, and that's why they don't say it out loud. To try and hide the true agenda of their ideology, women are desperate to control the definition of feminism, to pretend like it's about simple, harmless equality.
The thing that pisses me most off about the whole concept of feminism is that people think that it is anti-men.
Yeah.
And it's like, actually, if you're for women's rights, then you're a feminist. Like, we need to rebrand this concept. I have a girlfriend who, she was like, oh, I'm not a feminist, but. And I was like, sorry, whoa, stop talking about. I said, what did you just say? And she said, I'm not a feminist. I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, yeah, I'm not, I don't have hairy armpits. Like, I was like, babe, like, do you understand? And I went on my Google and I was like, do you understand what feminism means? It means you are pro women's rights.
Relax. You hear that, fellas? It's just about women's rights. In fact, if you Google, is feminism about hating men, you will be reassured, absolutely not. Feminists, on the whole, don't hate men. Researchers find feminists and non-feminists display no difference in attitude towards men, debunking the common myth that the feminists dislike men. A myth, they say. The notion that feminists dislike men is a myth. You guys know me. I don't care what women say. I care what they do. And so I devised a little experiment. I decided to go undercover into feminist headquarters, the 2X chromosome subreddit where over 14 million feminists worldwide gather. In this experiment, I pretended to be a woman, a feminist ally, and I posted explicitly hateful, sexist things against men. This was to give women the chance to debunk this idea that feminists hate men. After all, if that's just a myth, when I type out these sexist, hateful things about men into their subreddit, then surely they're all going to downvote me. If feminism is really just about equality, whenever I post bigoted things about men, I'll have a whole host of women disagreeing with me. So my plan was to start off gentle, just say mildly inappropriate or sexist things about men, just to see if I get upvoted or downvoted, and then to gradually increase the sexism, post more and more hateful, bigoted things against men, and then see where the line is, see how long it takes before feminists stand up for men. This is feminism on trial. Let's see how it does. In this first post, I responded to a woman who was considering ending a friendship with one of her girlfriends because she listens to the Joe Rogan podcast. Can you imagine? So I wrote, Joe Rogan appeals to young men, and I found that any content that is specifically enjoyed by men and appeals to masculinity is generally pretty toxic, just what I've observed. So that's how we began. It's a mildly sexist statement saying it's toxic if men enjoy men's content. I thought I might get downvoted, but no, as you can see, 5 upvotes. On this post that was shaming men for finding East Asian women attractive, I wrote, any man who says that he is looking for a feminine woman, instant red flag. But sadly, this too was upvoted. Feminists are evidently fine with shaming men for being attracted to femininity. So in response to this thread, which is a woman complaining about a male coworker being too nice to her, I wrote, there is nothing more suspicious than a man who is nice to you. Now, I did think that this ridiculous statement might prompt women to say, well, hold up, we want men to be nice to us. This is going too far, but no, I was wrong. This too was upvoted. And it was here that I realized that I was being too subtle. Making comments that have sexist implications is not going to do it. I need to be explicit. I need to be outright insulting, and maybe then we'll get women jump in to defend men. So I found a post called, I am repulsed by the thought of sleeping with my boyfriend. Sorry, by the time I screenshotted it, it seemed like someone had deleted its content, but in response to this post, I wrote this comment, men are such babies. They need applause and celebrations for just doing the bare minimum, like finally being a decent human being. There we go. That is a generalizing and explicitly sexist and insulting comment. I was sure that this would generate some backlash, but no. I was applauded, 68 upvotes. What is going on? The more hateful I am, the more popular my opinions are. Women, I am trying to give you the opportunity to prove that feminism is not about hating men. Where are the downvotes? Let's up the ante. Let's go even further. On this thread, which has a woman ranting against men expecting sex in a relationship, I wrote this: 100% agree. Men learned to frame sex as desiring touch and connection when the sex they seek is just as rapey and dominant as it has always been. I'm not buying the whole rebrand men are attempting with their whole touch is my love language bullshit. Men enjoy having power over women, and it makes them feel powerful when women are naked and vulnerable. Pathetic. I mean, surely this will do it. This is a hateful, sexist attack on men. But no, in fact, this comment got me my biggest praise so far, 73 upvotes. Clearly, I still need to go further. So on this thread about a woman who feels sexualized because of her innocent appearance, I wrote this: it's normalized male behavior. Men enjoy sexualizing teenagers and feel powerful making young women feel uncomfortable. As a gender, they are fundamentally sick. Now, speaking honestly, I know that this experiment was done somewhat in tongue and cheek. It was a foregone conclusion. We already know that feminists hate men. I wasn't expecting anything different. Feminists are incredibly sexist. My expectations were low. But at this stage, I was actually genuinely disappointed. I wrote that men enjoy having power over teenage women, that they like making them feel uncomfortable. I wrote that men, not some men, all men as a gender are fundamentally sick, and I was upvoted. But please tell me more about how feminism is just about equality. By all means, tell me that it's not about hating men. We do live in a sexist society, but in the mainstream, it is sexism from women against men. I'm not saying that there aren't men out there who are hateful towards women. They absolutely exist, but they live on the fringes and they're universally condemned. The difference is that feminism is the mainstream. On the largest forum for feminism on the planet with 14 million members, I can write that men as a gender are fundamentally sick and get upvoted. I'm celebrated. No one comes to men's defense. And in case you think that that was just a misunderstanding, that maybe the people who were applauding me thought that I was just saying some men, not all men, no, I tested that. On this post about hooking up with men on dating apps, I wrote, I'm honestly getting to the point of giving up on dating apps. Maybe there are some decent men on there, but it can't be more than 5%. Most men you meet are absolutely not safe to interact with. I wrote that 95% of men are not decent and not safe to interact with. But again, I was upvoted. This is the feminist conception of men, that 95% of us are monsters. They're okay with this sentiment. They upvoted. And for some reason, they're completely blind to how bigoted and sexist that belief is. This actually stopped being fun for me. I was actually just disgusted at this point. But I pushed on because I needed to find where the line was. I wanted to know how far I had to go before women would genuinely come to the defense of men. So on this thread about how a woman should feel about her man going to a strip club, I went nuclear. I wrote the most moronic, generalizing, hateful thing I could think. I wrote, the strippers being vulnerable is the appeal. Men pretend that it's just biology and they enjoy looking at pretty women, but it's lies. They like the power. Holding money over the heads of women and making them dance gives them a power trip, which they need because men are so pathetic inside. Seriously, imagine getting turned on and excited by forcing a woman to degrade herself in front of you for money. Who could enjoy that? It's not about sex, it's about power. Men truly are disgusting, vile creatures. And at last, finally, I was downvoted. Yes, I did it. I found the line. Women finally standing up for men, or so I thought. Because you see, my friends, there is a twist. Because under my comment, someone wrote, "Fuck off, signed a stripper." And that comment was upvoted 9 times. Now, I stared at this for a while, trying to make sense of it. And then I realized that I'd got it wrong. My comment wasn't downvoted because I was being hateful towards men. It was downvoted because what I said was offensive to strippers. Me saying that men are on a power trip over women, that they're pathetic, that they want to degrade women, that they're disgusting, vile creatures, that's okay. But it was my characterization of strippers as being vulnerable, that's what offended people. You understand? It was the strippers, not men that were victimized by my comment. Now, I've been accused many times in my life of having too high a standards. My expectations of people are just too high, and maybe that's true. But I can't help it. In this moment, I just feel such disgust. How dare you pass yourself off as the caring gender, the compassionate ones, as though women are kind and sweet and loving and understanding? How dare you pretend that feminism is about equality and women's rights? What a massive disappointment you are. What a huge letdown. Men across the planet were hoping for so much. They idolized women. Men everywhere put women up on a pedestal. They genuinely believed that women were so special. The reality is so profoundly disappointing. I think men everywhere just collectively need some time to grieve, to just process the deep sadness that we feel as we lose our idea of what women were, as we let go of the hope that we felt for what female nature is, and we come to grips with the reality of what they actually are. And the reality is just so sad. All the women who kept upvoting those sexist, hateful things that I wrote, you should be ashamed of yourselves. The hatred that you have in your heart is so ugly. I know that this started as a kind of upbeat video, like a fun little experiment, but by the end, honestly, I'm just reminded of how much the whole thing depressed me. I actually kept going from here because, that final comment still hadn't found the line. We still didn't know what you needed to say in order to get women to actually start downvoting you. I kept pushing and eventually I got myself banned. There's a whole story behind that and it just gets more depressing. The story just gets even worse from here. If anyone's invested at this point, you can keep watching the rest of the video on my Patreon. Things escalate pretty quickly, but I really wanted to know, what do I have to do? Where is this line? And again, the results are just so sad. But yeah, if you're curious, come join me on Patreon. The video continues there.